here. Rory, coming off a runner-up finish at Bay Hill last week and making your 13th start here, just some opening thoughts on carrying that momentum into this week.
Yeah, last week was definitely a positive, a step in the right direction, especially considering the finishes in Phoenix and LA. So, yeah, as much as I was disappointed that I didn't play the final 5 holes the way I wanted to. It was still a good week, and I feel like getting into contention last week and sort of having those feelings, sets me up well for this week.
Awesome. With that, we'll open it up to questions. If you just raise your hand, we'll get a mic over to you. We'll start with Dylan to share with golf.com.
Thank you. Yeah, Rory, you guys obviously just got out of the player meeting. How would you describe the vibe in there, the level of buy-in from all the players? What's that dynamic been like? Yeah, so I think when more information and data was presented to them, they, the people that maybe had reservations about it, I think came around. Or at least were more informed on their opinions, right? And I think the tour executives did a really good job of basically just walking them through the slides that we saw in the board meeting last Tuesday. Obviously not to the same degree of detail. We were in that board meeting for almost 7 hours last Tuesday. So, obviously we're all here trying to get ready for one of the biggest tournaments of the year. So with that time crunch, we just sort of they took the sort of most important slides and showed them to the membership. And I think it was good for them to see that and to see what the thinking is behind what we're really trying to do here. And I think the temperature in the room was, nowhere near as hot as I anticipated it to be once the information was sort of laid out. Yeah, and is there anything specifically about the rollout last week or about the either public perception or some player perception that you feel like needed to get cleared up? Yeah, I think just more so that there's enough jeopardy built into the system. Obviously, there's going to be 8 events with no cuts, but with everything that you have to do to get into those events. Look, Tiger Woods won 26 no-cut events in his career, right? There's always been no-cut events. So you just have to, Jack Nicklaus won 20 no-cut events, Arnold Palmer won 17. There, again, as I said last week, there's precedent for no-cut events, but I think the cuts that you have to make to get into those events, so making the playoffs, getting into the top 50, so there's certain things that you have to do to qualify for those events. And, I think that's more than fair to warrant, 8 events a year that are, guaranteeing the players 4 days.
Move to Doug Ferguson with the Associated Press next.
Rory, if you go back to Delaware in the first meeting and what you guys talked about that night, how did it look then compared with how it looks now?
Yeah, so, I said this in the meeting today. The presentation in Delaware was very self-serving for the 20 players in that room. We were looking at fields of 50 to 60. We were looking at, only 10 players dropping out of that top 50 every year, so a retention rate of 80%. The tour were like, look, the typical retention rate for the top 50s historically been around 60%. So let's try to get back to that number. So the structure that has been rolled out here is vastly different from the one that we all talked about and the guys saw in Delaware. And I think for the betterment of everyone, I think if we had went down that route, it doesn't serve the membership as anywhere near as well as what this structure does.
What in your opinion was the bigger change? The size of the field, retention, or number of elite events, or whatever? Yeah,
I mean, even that, the designated events were, I think there was 14.
originally in the Delaware deck, and I think we settled on 8 designated events outside of this event, the majors and the playoff events. So it's a you look at the entire schedule. There's 8 designated events outside of those tournaments that I just mentioned. But then there's 29 full field events during the rest of the calendar year.
We'll move over to Gene Frenette over here on your left.
Rory, 6 years ago when Jon Rahm played his first event here at the Players, had a really bad day on Saturday, shot his worst career round, struggled with reining in his emotions. I asked you about it afterwards, and you said that he's going to be one of the best players of this. You'd only been a pro for less than a year. You said he was going to win majors. You said he was going to be one of the greatest players of his generation. But as long as he channels his energy and passion the right way, could you talk about what we've seen from Jon Rahm since then? Because that seems like that has happened. And just talk about how he has evolved.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just all a part of the maturing process and experience and learning. I think we all knew that, even when Jon Rahm was in college, you could have made the argument that he was a top 20 player in the world. All the stats suggested that. And yeah, I mean, what he's done in the game up until this point, I think we all, he had the talent to do that. But as you said, it was just more of the, using that passion that he has and making that fuel his performance instead of taking it away. And he's obviously learned how to do that. He's an amazingly talented golfer. And he's just, look, last week wasn't a great week for him after the great start, but he's been relentless, and he's been relentless since that first win of his in Torrey Pines. He's just year after year, he wins. He's always up there. He's so consistent. His top 10 percentage rates off the charts. I mean, he's, as you said, he's going to be one of the best players of his generation.
As a follow-up, could you just talk from your own personal experience, the degree of difficulty of reining in your emotions when things aren't going well?
Yeah, it's hard. I think when you're younger, I think it's a little more difficult to see the bigger picture. And, every opportunity you get, every round you play feels like the biggest moment ever. But then when you sort of take a step back and you think about a career in golf, especially with how young John started or how young I started, over the course of 30 years, you're going to play a ton of golf tournaments. You're going to have a ton of opportunities. So, it makes a lot of those moments seem a little more manageable whenever you can sort of see the bigger picture better.
We have time for a few more. We're going to Malti with Bloomberg.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my question, and thanks for giving us a lowdown on what happened at the meeting. When you look at what the PGA is doing now, considering how to evolve its product and revamp its policies, how much of that would you say can be attributed to the emergence of LIV Golf and the acrimonious clash that's playing out in California court right now?
A lot of it. Look, I'm not going to sit here and lie. I mean, I think the emergence of LIV or the emergence of a competitor to the PGA Tour has benefited everyone that plays elite professional golf. I think, it's, when you've been the biggest golf league in the biggest market in the world for the last 60 years, there's not a lot of incentive to innovate. And this has caused a ton of innovation at the PGA Tour. And what was quite I'd say an antiquated system is being revamped to try to, mirror where we're at in the world in the 21st century with, the media landscape and just the PGA Tour isn't just competing with LIV Golf or other sports. It's competing with Instagram and TikTok and everything else that's trying to take eyeballs away from the PGA Tour as a product. So, is what, LIV coming along, it's definitely had a massive impact on the game, but I think everyone as a professional golfer is going to benefit from it going forward.
And one follow-up, if I may. What is the player sentiment like? The defending champion isn't here. I'm just sort of curious about, what player sentiment is like at the moment.
Yeah, I think, would it be better if the defending champion was here this week? Absolutely. But he made a decision that he felt was the best thing for him. And he knew that decision was going to come with consequences. And one of the consequences is right now not being able to play on the PGA Tour.
All right, got time for 3 more. We'll start with Scott, then go to Bob, and then John, and we'll wrap up.
Rory, for the better part of almost 2 years, you've been dealing with talking about this week in and week out, not only working with the tour, trying to build a better model, working with Tiger and your project that starts next year. Do you feel like now, with a lot of this stuff behind you, that maybe it will be easier to focus on golf and try to do what you want in that realm now?
I hope so. I mean, I think I've been doing a pretty good job of trying to balance both of those things. I feel like over the past 12 months I've played pretty well, but at the same time I've had all of this other stuff to deal with. And when I went on the board of the PGA Tour, I didn't imagine it would take up this much time, but I think it's been important work, and I'm proud of the steps that we in the PGA Tour have made to try to make everything better for the membership, and try to stem the floor players that have went to live. So, but yeah, hopefully with these new changes that have been announced, hopefully the majority of my time will be spent on concentrating on getting ready for golf tournaments and trying to be the best player that I can be. Not that I feel like it's taken away any of that, but it might give me a bit more free time to do other things that I enjoy to do as well.
Bob.
That's good info on those non-cut wins for Jack and Arnie. Thank you.
Just doing your job for you, Paul. That's fine.
This year, you guys are required to play in 3 non-designated events, and it's really helped, like the Amex and Torrey Pines and maybe Valspar next week. That's not going to be the case next year. Do you see yourself playing any beyond? There's 16 of these now, I guess. Do you see yourself playing any beyond those 16, and could that be an issue if guys don't do that?
So, again, I think one of the things you're going to hear a little bit later on is like schedule cadence. That's going to be a pretty key term in all of this. And the way the schedule's laid out next year, you're going to have, everyone sort of heard this, like 2 designated, maybe 3 full field, 2 designated. I don't particularly want to take 3 weeks off in between big events. I'm going to play at least one of those 3 to try to keep my game sharp. So, again, it's trying to create the best schedule that, guarantees that the top players play in the big events, but also that it can sort of guarantee their participation in a handful of the full field events as well. So, I think there's a pretty good balance to it, and I can certainly, if you've got those 16 events from January to August isn't a ton, right? You're going to play more than that to feel sharp and ready to go at the biggest events.
Last one here with John Hopkins on the right. Rory.
Rory, hi. You feel that 5 European victories here, if I've done my maths correctly, is a fair return on in terms of European players playing in this event? Do you feel they've underachieved, or do you think that's about right? And there's a general perception, which of course can be wrong, that it's perhaps not quite as good as it should have been. What do you feel about that?
Just at this event?
Yeah, here, yeah.
I guess I'd have to look at historical averages of European players winning on the PGA Tour and seeing what percentage that is compared to, I don't know how many Players' Championships have been staged, 40 something?
Yeah.
So you're saying 5 European winners in 40, so over 10%. I don't feel like that's a bad average. But yeah, I'd have to dig into it more. I mean,
as the years have went on, we've had more and more Europeans play in this event. So, you'd like to think that the chances of European victory are going to become more and more as those participation levels increase. But if someone was to say to me that 10% of Players' Championships have been won by Europeans, I would say that that's a pretty good return.
Do you feel there's anything about this course that either suits or doesn't suit players who come from Europe?
Not anymore. I mean, all the top Europeans live here. They play on this tour. You could maybe have made that argument 20 years ago, but I just think with the way the professional golf landscape is, we all base ourselves in this country and specifically in this area in Florida at this time of the year. So I don't think there's any excuses.
Appreciate the time as always, Rory. Good luck this week.